Hello and welcome to Topic Lake Insights presents Regulation Rangers, making sense of rules that shape our world. I'm your host, Julian Cross, and joining me today is our expert, Elena Harper.
Hello, everyone.
It's January 7th, 2025, and today we're diving into a whole stack of new regulations that just dropped on January 6th.
That's right, a veritable buffet of bureaucratic changes.
It's like the government decided to kick off the new year with a bang. We've got new rules from all over the place.
Yeah.
The Ag Department, Commerce, EPA, HHS, HUD, Justice, you name it.
And it spans a range of topics, too. Everything from how the government calculates fees for grain inspections to who's on the restricted entities list for trade.
And there's even a change to the IPA security rule, which, let's face it, affects pretty much anyone who's ever seen a doctor.
Yeah, it's a lot to digest, so let's break it down and see what's really important.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting with the Agriculture Department and a final rule from the Agricultural Marketing Service about how they calculate fees for grain inspection services.
This one's all about making sure the agency can cover the costs of providing those services. You know, things like inspecting grain for quality and safety.
So it's kind of like a user fee, ensuring the system can sustain itself.
Exactly. The U.S. Green Standards Act actually mandates that these fees cover the cost of the service and allow the agency to maintain an operating reserve.
That makes sense. So if you're a farmer or anyone involved in the grain industry, these fee changes could directly impact your bottom line.
Precisely. Now let's shift gears to the Commerce Department and a final rule from the Bureau of Industry and Security. This one's a bit more cloak and dagger. Revisions to the entity list.
The entity list, what's that all about?
Think of it as a list of companies, organizations, or even individuals who are considered a potential risk to U.S. national security or foreign policy.
So if you're on this list, it's basically a big red flag.
You could say that. Being added to the entity list can seriously limit your ability to do business with U.S. companies. This particular rule adds 13 new entities.
Wow, 13. I wonder what they did to land on that list. It really makes you think about the global implications of trade and national security.
It certainly does. Speaking of potential risks, let's move on to the Environmental Protection Agency. They've been busy issuing 2 final rules.
Oh, I bet this has to do with all those forever chemicals we keep hearing about.
You're right on the money. One of the rules deals with PFAS, those per- and polyfluoroalkyl substances that are seemingly everywhere and linked to various health problems.
Okay, so what's the EPA doing about them?
This rule requires companies to report if they release certain PFAS chemicals into the environment. It's part of a larger effort to track and ultimately reduce the presence of these harmful substances.
It's like shining a light on these hidden dangers and holding companies accountable.
Absolutely. And the second EPA rule also focuses on chemicals, specifically new ones coming onto the market. These are called significant new use rules.
So this is about making sure new chemicals aren't going to cause unexpected harm.
Exactly. Before companies can manufacture or process certain new chemicals, they now have to notify the EPA and provide information about how those chemicals will be used.
It's like a safety check before these chemicals are widely released.
Yeah.
Now that's thinking ahead.
Right. It allows the EPA to assess potential risks and, if necessary, take steps to mitigate them before it's too late.
That's reassuring. Now let's switch gears to the Health and Human Services Department, specifically the Food and Drug Administration. They've released some new draft guidance for the pharmaceutical industry.
Yes, this guidance focuses on complying with regulations that ensure batch uniformity and drug product integrity, which is especially important for medications made using advanced manufacturing techniques.
So this is all about making sure that every pill, every dose is consistent and meets the highest quality standards.
Precisely. While it's just draft guidance for now, it gives pharmaceutical companies a clearer understanding of what the FDA expects and could lead to changes in how drugs are manufactured down the line.
Speaking of HHS, there's also a proposed rule aimed at strengthening cybersecurity for electronic health information. This is huge because HIPAA affects anyone who's ever been to a doctor.
Absolutely. In today's world, with data breaches and cyber attacks on the rise, protecting our sensitive health information is more critical than ever. This proposed rule seeks to bolster those protections by updating existing standards and introducing new requirements.
What kind of new requirements?
Things like more robust risk assessments and breach reporting procedures. It's all about adapting to the evolving landscape of cybersecurity threats.
It seems like a necessary step, especially with healthcare data being so valuable to hackers. Let's move on to the Housing and Urban Development Department, or HUD. They've issued a final rule on the Home Investment Partnerships Program.
This program is all about creating and maintaining affordable housing, which is a major challenge in many communities. This final rule aims to streamline the process for states and local governments to get funding for affordable housing projects.
So it's about cutting through the red tape and making it easier to create affordable rental and homeownership options.
Exactly. By simplifying the process and aligning it more closely with other federal housing programs, HUD is hoping to increase the efficiency and effectiveness of the home program.
That's a positive step towards addressing a critical need.
Now, let's turn to the Justice Department and a withdrawal of a proposed rule from the Office of Justice Programs.
This one deals with the Victims of Crime Act Victim Compensation Grant Program, which provides financial assistance to victims of crime. The Office of Justice Programs was considering changes to this program, but they've decided to pull back on those proposed changes.
So they had an idea, put it out there, and then decided to go back to the drawing board. I wonder what prompted that change, of course.
It could be a number of things. Maybe they received significant feedback on the proposed changes, or perhaps priorities shifted within the department. Whatever the reason, it's a reminder that the regulatory process is dynamic and responsive. Okay, last but not least, we have another withdrawal of a proposed rule this time from the Food and Nutrition Service, which is part of the Agriculture Department.
This one relates to the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, which helps millions of Americans put food on the table. The agency was considering changes to the SNAP quality control system, which is designed to prevent fraud and ensure benefits go to those who qualify, but they've decided to withdraw that proposal.
It's interesting, isn't it? On one hand, you want a system that's efficient and prevents abuse, but on the other hand, you don't want to create unnecessary hurdles for people who genuinely need this assistance.
It's a delicate balance, for sure. You have to weigh the need for program integrity with the potential impact on those who rely on these benefits.
Exactly, and it's those kinds of complex considerations that often drive regulatory changes, or in this case, the decision to withdraw a proposed change.
So we've covered a lot of ground today. From grain inspections to cybersecurity, affordable housing to food assistance programs. It's amazing how many aspects of our lives are touched by regulations. It really is. And these regulations, whether they're final rules, proposed rules, or even withdrawals, provide a fascinating glimpse into what the government is prioritizing and how they're trying to shape our world.
And sometimes even the decisions about what not to change can be just as revealing as the decisions to implement new rules.
Absolutely. It's like a window into the ongoing dialogue between different stakeholders, government agencies, industry groups, advocacy organizations, and, of course, the public.
It makes you realize that regulations aren't just static documents. They're part of a constantly evolving process, responding to new challenges and changing priorities.
Precisely. And that's why it's so important to stay informed and engage in these discussions, because ultimately these regulations impact all of us in one way or another.
Well said. Now, if you're feeling a little overwhelmed by all this regulatory talk, don't worry, we've got you covered. For a more in-depth look at any of these regulations, you can always head over to www.topiclake.com.
That's right. You'll find all the details there, along with analysis and insights to help you make sense of it all. And be sure to check back regularly for updates on the ever-changing world of regulations.
Well said, Elena. Thanks for joining me on this regulatory roller coaster ride.
It's been my pleasure, Julian. Always happy to delve into the fascinating world of regulations with you.
Visit www.topiclake.com to stay up to date.